Hi, I'm Christina, and this is a book review of How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This is a science fiction, literary fiction novel, and it was published in 2022. I absolutely love this book. I've given it 5 stars, and I have to say it is completely unlike anything I have ever read before, so for me this is truly unique. It is strange, it's weird, it's dark, and at times it is absurd, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. The book reads most like a short story collection, and we follow a number of different perspectives. The first of which is a grieving father. He is a scientist, and his daughter was also a scientist before she died. So he decides to go to Siberia to help continue her research. Her team have found the body of a girl who is 30,000 years old, and inside this girl's body is a virus. As the permafrost melts, this virus enters into the ocean, into our water supply, and it travels around the world. And now the virus is unleashed across the whole of humanity, and this pandemic spreads rapidly. We then follow a number of different people after this virus has been unleashed upon the world. In the second perspective, we follow a man who was a comedian before the virus. He wasn't a particularly successful comedian though, and now he takes a job as a children's entertainer at a euthanasia theme park. So this is a place where you take your child who is terminally ill, you spend the day together having fun, enjoying the rides, and then the final ride is a roller coaster, and they will experience an immense amount of joy as they reach the top of the roller coaster, and then they will pass out and they will die peacefully in their sleep. And the virus itself is very, very widespread at this time. Lots and lots of people are dying, especially children. And this was one of the stories that I thought was the strongest in the whole collection. There are definitely some stories that I enjoyed more than others, some that hit me a lot harder than others emotionally, and some of them that were a little bit more forgettable for me. So overall, I thought some of the stories and some of the chapters and the characters were absolutely brilliant, and I absolutely loved them. And some of them were just kind of okay and not quite as good, but I think that is to be expected. And the ones that I did enjoy the most are the first one, which is called 30,000 Years Beneath a Eulogy. The second one is called City of Laughter. And then one of the other ones I really enjoyed is called Pig Son. And then the one that I also really enjoyed is the final one, which is called, let me find it, The Scope of Possibility. So yeah, those are my 4 favourite stories, if you will, in this. And like I say, some of them are a lot more hard-hitting, a lot more emotional. Some of them are a little bit more kind of surreal, and I think together it worked really, really well as a whole, but there's definitely stories that have left a massive impact on me and made me feel incredibly emotional. The one that's called Pig Son I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it has one of my favourite characters in the whole story. So essentially we're following a man who is grieving for his son. He is a scientist and he is doing animal testing to try to find a cure for this virus, and he comes across a very unusual and unique pig, and it's just absolutely brilliant. And the final story, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I thought that was absolutely wonderful. It just completely tied the whole book together, and I was sitting there thinking that was just sensational. And it just really blew my mind, and I thought it was just absolutely wonderful. And that's what made the book feel so unique, so different from anything I've ever read before. The way in which he kind of tied together all of his stories and all of his characters, I just thought was absolutely astounding. And I just sat there and just appreciated how brilliantly he had written this book. I think, like I said, some of the stories aren't quite as memorable for me. Obviously, it'll be different for different people. Those were the 4 that I liked the most, that I thought were just brilliant, brilliant stories. And I would highly, highly recommend this book. And like I said, it's completely unlike anything I've ever read before. So unique is the word I would put in for this one. And in terms of science fiction, it is so bleak at times. It's so dark. It deals with such heavy subject matter. There is so much death, so much grief, and it's truly, truly awful at times. But at other times there is so much like hope and light, and especially the way in which the story progresses towards the end. It explores so many different themes, and it was just, absolutely brilliant. And it went into a direction I hadn't even considered or imagined this book would go to. So as I was reading it, I thought I was reading a book that was a virus novel, a pandemic novel, a book that's kind of climate fiction, because obviously it's talking about the dangers of climate change and then permafrost melting and viruses entering our water supply, entering the world, and then pandemics being unleashed upon humanity. But it also talks about so many other parts of science fiction that I don't want to say because of spoilers, and some of them were just absolutely wonderful. And I went into this book only expecting one thing. I expected this from it, and then it just gave me so much more. It covered so much ground, so much scope. It covers centuries, millennia at times, and it covers different worlds and universes, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I would highly, highly recommend it. And it's one of those kind of science fiction books I think is going to stay with me for a very long time, and I can definitely see me rereading this one. I wonder if I might even just dip in and reread some of my favourite stories again, and some of them were incredibly hard-hitting, incredibly poignant. I think the one titled City of Laughter was very, very hard-hitting, and just we kind of follow love stories and we follow families and relationships and friendships, and it's brilliant. Honestly, he covers so much ground, again, in actually a very short novel. It's only, how many pages is it? It's under 300 pages, and to think that he encompasses so much of humanity in such a small book, and he has so much scope, he covers so many different things, and I think that was why it stood out as such a brilliant book to me. He went into it trying to achieve so many things, and I think he absolutely nailed every single one. And that's a really, really difficult thing to do. I think you have some books that have a massive scope and then it falls down in some sections. But this one is excellent. It was moving, it was emotional, it made me cry at multiple times. I don't know how many times I shed tears over this book, but it was really, really good. And I can't really think anything that is similar to it in the same kind of vein as this book. I would say it is kind of reminiscent of Emily St. John Mandel. The way, the writing style and the way that he writes is quite similar to kind of Emily St. John Mandel, who I absolutely loved, and I absolutely love her stories. And yeah, there isn't anyone else I really think it's similar to. So overall, I thought this was absolutely brilliant. I would highly, highly recommend it. My favourite aspect is the way in which he just ties all of these characters and all of these stories together. You see some characters in some of the stories and they reappear later on, or other people in their families reappear later on, and just the way he weaves this all together and he makes this beautiful web, and it's just absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best science fiction books I've ever read. It's definitely going to be one of the best books I've read in 2024. I just can't wait to see what he writes next. I love his writing style. I think he writes beautifully. He's got some brilliant, massive ideas, and he managed to pack them all together in a rather short story, actually, only 300 pages. This is the kind of book that could have gone on for 500, 600, 700 pages with the amount of things he covers and the scope and all of the different things he tries to put in here. He's really put a lot into quite a short story, and yeah, it absolutely blew my mind at times. He explored themes that were just really, really interesting, and this is like brilliant science fiction for me. He just covers so much ground. He's got a brilliant imagination. Some of the things he comes up with, I was just in awe of, and some of the stories are so strange and surreal, and you don't even know if it's truly happening in one of them. And yeah, just brilliant, brilliant book. I could not recommend this one more highly. I also think this book is one of those rare books that feels new and unique and interesting and different, and like he's playing with lots of different ideas, and I feel like this could be one of the classics of the future. It was absolutely brilliant, and yeah, I just thought it was so, so good. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, and there is one thing I would say. I think the back of the book gives away too much of the story, and I purchased the book knowing very, very little about it, apart from the fact that it was a science fiction novel, it was a virus novel, a pandemic novel. And I'm so, so pleased I didn't read the back of the book, because it tells you so many things that I think are spoilers. And when I was reading the book, I was absolutely shocked at some of the twists and the turns that he made. And I just genuinely didn't think this story was going in the direction it did go in. And had I have read the back of the book, I would have already known that, because it told me most of what happened. So I would just say, if you haven't already, don't read the back of the book, because I think you'll get a much richer and fuller experience if you go into this one knowing very little, which is also why I've told you so little of the rest of the stories and the rest of the characters. And there's so many things I would love to say about this book and tell you, because it's just so brilliant, but I think all of it would go into spoiler territory, so I've not spoken about any of it. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. Completely love this book, and I am very much looking forward to reading whatever he writes next. He's definitely going to be an auto-buy author for me now. I will just buy whatever he writes. So thank you so much for watching. Please do like the video if you liked it, and please do subscribe if you'd like to hear more of me talking about books. If you have read this one, I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. And if I've encouraged you to read it, definitely let me know that too. And if you remember, let me know what you thought of it once you've read it. I would love to know. Bye.